This is the first of a many-part series of my book, The Search for Being, read by the author Bonnie Calcagno. Introduction. It was in the 9th grade that the things I had been taught began to break down. I would challenge some of my teachers in the classroom. The religious beliefs that I had been taught in a Roman Catholic elementary school didn't make sense to me anymore. It was with surprise and relief that in high school, in an advanced placement American history course, I read the criticisms of Thomas Jefferson of Christianity. He helped me to articulate some of what I felt. That history course was one of the few that made sense to me in high school. Going to school was like serving out a prison sentence. Even in college, I saw school as a boring game of pleasing the instructor to get an A. I might argue with instructors who I thought were giving a biased political view, but when it came time for test, it was a matter of giving them back what they gave me. There was only one course in college where the instructor would assign only 10 pages of reading after each class, so that, she said, we would have time to think. For the most part, memorizing was important. Thinking or creativity was not. It was when I graduated college that, I feel, my education began. I was looking for something. It was as if everything they told me in the family, in school, in church was wrong. I began to find what I was looking for when I hit the psychology section of the library. I began to understand my feelings, to understand feelings were important. I began to understand what was going on in my family. It gave me a whole other way to look at things. In the philosophy section of the library, I read about Eastern religions, and that helped me too, to construe reality in a new way. But one of the most important discoveries I made happened at a teachers' conference I was attending with some colleagues. We were given a learning style preference inventory. My results were different from the results of all the people I was sitting with. That was my introduction to personality type. I spent about a year after that reading books on the Myers-Briggs theory of personality that gave me deep insights into my personality. What I was doing in the many years I spent reading was replacing the way my family, my schooling, my church had taught me to construe reality with alternative construction systems of the many psychologists and psychoanalysts whose ideas I read about in books. And as I look back, I realize the thing I was really searching for, even though I didn't know it then, was my own being, my own sense of aliveness. I was an introvert in a family of extroverts, where extroversion was held up as the right way to be. I was an intuitive in a family of sensing types, where some relatives harped on the importance of common sense. I worked in a social environment with colleagues who were overwhelmingly social types. Again, I didn't belong. I kept trying to be like the people around me, and I lost myself in the process. There were no role models to show me another way of being. It was only in my late 40s that I really feel I became who I was, that I discovered alternative ways of construing my own being, alternative ways of construing reality. Now I am in my 50s, and one of the saddest things I see is how little things have changed since my youth. I see high school students, after years of meeting external expectations, other people's expectations, graduate feeling utterly lost. So very little time is devoted to looking inside, to discovering who they really are, what their gifts and talents are. In many ways, things seem worse today than ever. Politicians have entered the fray, pushing harder than ever the standards, external standards in the schools. It is no accident, I think, that today our youth erupt into violence at sporting events or even in the schools themselves. Erich Fromm has a very cogent explanation of why this happens, which I discuss in my book. We are an extroverted culture where discussions of being are very rare when they occur at all. We are a sensing culture, out of touch with our inner intuitive selves. Being is important. Feeling a sense of aliveness is important. It is tragic to me that we give our young people so little opportunity, so little time, so little guidance in discovering what's inside them. Maybe it is because I missed out on what my life might have been that I have tried to write this book to share what it took me so long to learn. It is not a scholarly book. It's just a simple description of what I found in my own very personal search for being. In our families, in our schools, in our churches, we learn ways of construing reality. Sometimes those ways get in the way of achieving our potential. One theme of this book is that there is no one way of construing reality. There are many alternative construction systems. I try to show the ones that have been most important to me. Each of the ways of construing what is that I present can help us, I believe, in the search for being. The key is in finding systems of construction that match our experience. In a real sense, our search is often a search to find the words to help us to make one of the many alternative ways of construing being that works for us. What follows in my book is always, of course, my interpretation of each of the author's works I present. The references I used follow, so if you want to read the author's works for yourselves, you can. I expect that some of the authors I studied have since written other books, and their systems of construction have probably evolved. The time is right, I think, for us as a country to talk about more than just the need for external standards. If you want to understand what I'm talking about, sit down and talk to a high school graduate after all the emphasis on meeting standards, our external standards, and see if they don't seem lost and directionless. Spend some time asking yourself why. Ask yourself if we give them any help at all to put them in touch with their own being, with some of the alternative ways of construing being.